The ending of From Season 4, Episode 7 may have just changed everything we knew about the creatures, Fatima, and even the entire war for Fromville. Because after 4 seasons of watching the residents desperately try to survive against an enemy they barely understand, the series may have finally revealed humanity's greatest weapon. And strangely enough, that weapon might be Smiley himself. But before we get into all the crazy implications, let's quickly recap what happened. Episode 7 saw Boyd reunite with Kenny and Ellis at the post office as they prepared for their latest plan. Boyd was willing to face the creatures himself, but Kenny and Ellis convinced him not to. Instead, Kenny stepped up. At the same time, the residents hoped that the mysterious totems they had created would finally give them some sort of advantage against the monsters. Unfortunately, things quickly spiraled out of control. Zombie Roger infiltrated Colony House, the creatures seemed to predict every possible escape route, and Kenny eventually found himself trapped inside the bus with Smiley. And that's where everything changed. And if you're obsessed with unraveling the mysteries of From, theories, and episode breakdowns every week, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a comment now. I make this video all by myself, and most importantly, subscribe if you love your mother.
Just kidding.
As Smiley transformed into his monstrous form and prepared to attack, something completely unexpected happened. Smiley froze. He looked confused. And back at Colony House, Fatima suddenly appeared to experience everything through his eyes. Somehow, she reached into his mind and momentarily took control of him. Those few precious seconds were enough for Kenny to kick Smiley out of the bus, activate the talisman, and survive the night. And this revelation might be bigger than Kenny surviving. Because for a long time, Fatima's connection to Smiley almost felt like one of those strange details that viewers weren't supposed to take too seriously. Ever since she unwillingly gave birth to him, she had talked about still feeling connected to him. She even built that strange mud golem because it made her feel stronger and helped her deal with that bizarre bond. At the time, it almost sounded like someone trying to cope with an impossible trauma. After all, who wouldn't be emotionally damaged after giving birth to a literal monster? But episode 7 proves she wasn't imagining any of it. The connection is real, and the truth is far more disturbing than anyone realized. Not only can Fatima occasionally see through Smiley's eyes, but she can also control him. Maybe not completely, and maybe only when he fully transforms into his monster form, but even a few seconds of influence was enough to save Kenny's life. Which raises a fascinating question. What happens if Fatima becomes stronger? Because suddenly, the residents have something they have never had before, an advantage. For 4 seasons, humanity has been losing. Guns don't work, traps don't work, fire doesn't work. Every plan they come up with eventually fails. The creatures always seem to be one step ahead. But perhaps the answer was never humans fighting monsters. Perhaps the answer was always monsters fighting monsters. If Fatima can control Smiley, then she may eventually be able to turn him against the other creatures. And if anyone has the power to destroy them, it would make sense that one of their own could do it. Maybe all the failed plans throughout the series were leading to this one possibility. Maybe the thing that will finally break the creatures' hold over Fromville is one of the creatures themselves. Ironically, the monsters may have created the very thing that will destroy them. After all, Fatima and Smiley are literally mother and son. That connection transcends the horrifying process that brought them back, which makes me wonder whether the architect behind the creatures even anticipated something like this. Whoever designed the cycle of death and rebirth probably assumed no human would ever gain enough power to influence one of the creatures, but Fatima has proven otherwise. And maybe the mud golem played a role in all of this. At first, it seemed like the totems were going to be the answer. Kenny used one against a creature and absolutely nothing happened. The monster didn't die, it barely reacted, which immediately destroyed everyone's hopes about using them as weapons. But maybe we've been misunderstanding their purpose all along. Perhaps the totems were never meant to hurt creatures directly. Instead, maybe their true purpose is to strengthen the person who creates them. Fatima herself said that building the mud figure reminded her of the fantastical stories her father used to tell her. Those memories gave her comfort. They reminded her who she was. And perhaps that emotional connection strengthened her resolve enough to deepen her bond with Smiley. It may not have literally given her powers, but it might have helped unlock something that already existed inside her. Which makes the ending even more incredible, because if Fatima can see through Smiley's eyes, then she has become one of the most dangerous people in Fromville. And that's exactly why she's now painted a target on her back. Sophia is not going to sit back and allow the residents to gain an upper hand. If Smiley truly becomes wild card, then Fatima becomes a threat that needs to be eliminated. And considering how intelligent and manipulative Sophia has been throughout the series, it wouldn't surprise me if she starts focusing her attention on Fatima in the episodes ahead. Speaking of Sophia, episode 7 also revealed something incredibly disturbing. The creatures knew exactly where Kenny was going. Every building that could have offered safety was blocked. Every possible escape route was covered. It was almost as if the monsters had already been briefed on Boyd's plan. And maybe they had been. Earlier, Boyd shared parts of his strategy with Sara, and since Sophia is connected to Sara's mind, she probably extracted that information and passed it on to the creatures, which means the residents have a much bigger problem than they realize, because Sara isn't the only one. Henry is another one of Sophia's spies. Neither of them are doing it intentionally, of course, they're victims. But if Sophia can access their minds, then every conversation around them becomes dangerous. Every plan discussed in their presence could already be compromised before it even begins. And the scariest part is that the residents probably won't realize this immediately. Instead, they're going to notice a pattern. The creatures will continue staying one step ahead. Plans will continue failing. Eventually, Boyd and the others are going to become suspicious, and once that happens, I think they're going to start running fake operations. They'll feed different pieces of information to different people and see which plans get leaked. That's how they'll identify the weak link. Hopefully, Sara and Henry won't be blamed for something they can't control, because both of them have suffered enough already. The true enemy isn't them, it's Sophia, who has spent years manipulating everyone and turning their own minds into weapons against them. But that's not the only important revelation in episode 7. The totems may have failed against the creatures, but they do seem to work against reanimated humans. Zombified Roger was affected by them, and at first that might not sound like a big deal. After all, there aren't many reanimated humans running around. But that could change. Because if Fatima uses Smiley to wipe out some of the creatures, then Sophia may respond by creating more reanimated humans. And if that happens, suddenly those totems become extremely valuable. The very objects that seemed useless in episode 7 could become the key to surviving the next phase of the war. And that's what this episode feels like, the next phase of the war. For years, the residents have done nothing but react. They've been running, hiding, and desperately trying to survive. But episode 7 feels like the moment when the balance of power started shifting. The humans are evolving, the creatures are adapting, and Sophia is preparing her counterattack. Which makes me think that we're entering the endgame of the series, because everything suddenly feels bigger. Smiley is no longer just one of the monsters, he's become humanity's greatest wildcard. Fatima is no longer just someone trying to recover from trauma. She may have become the most important person in Fromville. The totems aren't what we thought they were. Sara and Henry are unknowingly leaking information to the enemy, and Sophia may already be planning her next move. But there's one final question that I can't stop thinking about. If Fatima can see through Smiley's eyes, can Smiley see through hers? Because if that connection works both ways, then humanity's greatest weapon may also be its greatest vulnerability. And knowing From, that's exactly the kind of horrifying twist this show would pull.